Welcome back to the Aesthetic Edit podcast. My name is Mary Robb.
I'm Savannah Barano.
We're so excited today. We just got back from Vegas.
Woo! Viva Las Vegas.
We have a lot to talk about.
So much
and
to
we
talk
have
about.
3 minutes to fit it all in.
Oh, God.
So
Okay.
Let's just go there.
Don't rush me.
I know. So we were at the Medical Spa show hosted by Am Spa. We stayed at the Wynn. It was Savannah's first time in Vegas and also her first time at the show.
Oh my gosh.
What were your thoughts?
I'm overwhelmed by the experience. It was so great. I'm never going to be able, any trip that I have in Vegas is never going to live up to this one. First off, we stayed at the Wynn, which if y'all have not been there, it is the most incredible hotel ever in Vegas.
It has to be the nicest hotel in Vegas.
So,
You
also
are
the biggest.
spoiled. That is so great.
We were walking around and I was like, am I in the middle of the mall? Because there were like,
I could live
Louis
there.
Vuitton, like there were all of these crazy stores. And then on top of that, there were restaurants. We never left. Every meal we had was inside of the hotel because of how big it was. The
don't
food
have
was
to leave.
incredible, by the way, too. I'm a big
So
foodie.
good.
So that was really fun. And
Yeah.
then also we were there not just for play, but for work too. And Am Spa was incredible. The medical show was incredible. My first time ever going. I know Social Practice went a few years ago.
Yeah.
And you said it was so much bigger this year.
It was overwhelming by how much it's grown. And I think our biggest takeaway was just the opportunity in the aesthetics industry is it has been and it continues to be just so far beyond even my own comprehension. The industry is growing by 27% year over year, which is huge. There are now over 10,000 med spas in the US. They're employing over 100,000 people and it continues to just explode.
Yeah. We're in the right industry, Mary.
I think so. It's also just so fun.
It's so fun. It was really affirming to hear how many people really needed our services too. Like anytime people would come to our booth, they were telling us like, this is such an incredible opportunity. Like we've been needing social media help. And so that was really fun to be able to experience that. And I got to kind of get a little taste of what you experience when you go to shows like this.
Yeah.
And see what lights the fire under your butt of like, we got to grow. Like we got to do this. We got to scale. And there's so much opportunity. So now I see it and I'm just as excited as you are.
Good. And
Not
that's
that
the
I
thing.
haven't been.
Well, you know, it's one of those things where I want the team to be exposed to this because I come to the office and I'm like, I'm so excited. And you guys are like, what is wrong with you? But there truly is. There's so much potential.
It's the visual aspect. Like we hear all about it. We hear about the opportunity, but to actually lay eyes on the opportunity was really, really incredible.
And to feel the energy of the people.
Yes.
And the energy of Christina Aguilera coming to our table.
Let's talk about it. Okay, before we talk about Christina Aguilera, are your feet still numb?
I think I
How
had
are
like
your feet?
90% feeling back on my toes. I was not having a stroke. So my hypochondriac, we put that to rest.
Yes. Mary lost feeling in her toes from wearing heels. We wore heels like the entire weekend. That was our mistake.
Yeah, it was the Christina Aguilera night. We were out for a very long time.
We were. But it was so worth it.
Yeah.
Guys, we y'all need to go look at our stories. We posted on our stories when we were there, but it was incredible. We were so close to Christina Aguilera. We could smell her breath if we wanted to.
She walked up
It
to
was
our
insane.
table and cheersed us.
Yes.
And if you guys know
Cheers,
me,
me lovies.
she's my favorite singer of all time. So anyways, we had the best time.
Oh, it was so fun.
It was a blast.
But now we're back.
We're back. We're so excited. We today have our first plastic surgeon guest, and we are so excited about this, y'all. We've been working with this woman for 3-4 years, for a long time, and she is truly so phenomenal. She's a board certified plastic surgeon. Her practice has blown up. She is not only a phenomenal surgeon, she's an incredible caretaker and doctor of her patients, but she's also a phenomenal business owner, and we're just so excited to have her here. She has a very unique approach in the way that she serves her patients, and she believes that not one surgery fits all. She's very, very passionate about treating her patients and really getting to the root cause and just giving them the best solution possible to address the concerns they have. So we are so excited to bring in Dr. Rachel Walker.
Woo.
Thank you so much for coming to our show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We're so excited to have you here. And I would love to just have you share more about your story and how you got started in plastic surgery.
Well, I mean, in terms of starting the business, I started around the same time as you did. I think 2019 for both of us was kind of a crazy time to start a business, particularly with COVID coming a couple months later.
Oh my gosh.
And it's really just grown over the last 4 years. So it's been exciting for me and exciting to grow a team and exciting to just really build this awesome patient base.
Yeah, you have just been so blessed, and you had some crazy things happen in the beginning with was it the ice storm that caused the flood?
Yes, that is not one of my favorite memories. I had immediately remodeled the office when I got there because this office looked like a man dungeon from Italy, and that wasn't my vibe. So I decided to make it nice, light, feminine, and not like a doctor's office. I wanted it to be a very approachable space and people to just feel like they wanted to be there. So I do this whole remodel, which was very stressful because I know nothing about plumbing or electricity. Now I know some about both. And then 11 months later, the entire building flooded in the winter storm, and there's silly copper pipes in my attic that do not like freezing weather. And they just started raining through the can lights. So I'm looking on my camera from my house. I had gone into the office every day during the winter.
It happening in the camera.
And it's falling down. It's 8 p.m. I put my
what do you do?
Snow boots on. That seemed responsible. I put a coat on. I bring no gloves. I go like ice skating in my car to the office with no plan.
Wow.
And there's just water going all over the 5,000 square feet.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, I don't even know where the water shut-off valve is, which made me feel like a very terrible business owner. And
well, who would know?
I always knew with my houses, but I guess I didn't think the building mattered. And so I finally used my breast retractor to get the lid off of the water main shut off, but it is buried under 12 inches of frozen mud. So I went back into the office that is still raining inside, got a spoon from the kitchen and started digging. Happily, the dentist next door and the financial planner were both there because their offices were flooding as well. So 45 minutes later, we got the water shut off.
Wow.
That is insane.
And then my really delightful brother brought 3 mini shop vacs to help us suck the water off the floor because you couldn't get any help because everything in Dallas was flooding.
I'm sure that's not how you were expecting to start your business.
No.
At all?
At least I did know a bunch of contractors from the first remodel. So that helped. The insurance claim wasn't fun, and I have delightful patients. And they didn't mind seeing me in a tiny room with painters painting in the next room. And we made it work. I have a great team who went through 2 remodels with me. A lot of paint fumes, but it worked out.
To learn more about the Aesthetic Edit podcast, follow us on social media at the Aesthetic Edit podcast. We can be found on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
We'd love to hear from you if you have show ideas or guest recommendations for our future podcast episodes. This is what I love about you, though, is that you're so resilient and you have this energy about you where you're like, we're just going to figure it out. And we talked a little bit about this before, and I would love to talk about this now, is that you have had experiences with people that have doubted your ability or your passion and just your ambition. So can you share a little bit more about just like, because we have providers that are going to be listening in and you have that resilience and you have that just motivation. Where do you think that comes from? And how did you build that over time?
I definitely think it was built with my parents, of course. I mean, they were just kind of instilled in my sister, brother, and I, like, you can just do it. Like, if there's no reason you can't do it. And then I had goals. Like, I just grew up wanting to be a doctor, but I didn't know any female doctors. And then I went to a college that didn't really have a lot of medical people. It was a liberal arts school. And they're like, getting into med school is hard. And I was like, well, I mean, a lot of things are hard. Shouldn't you at least try? I mean, worst case, you fail, right?
Yeah.
And then went to residency, which was something that plastic surgery is hard to match into. Only 42% of people match. And they're like, well, you should backup apply to something. And I'm like, I don't want to spend the rest of my life doing general surgery when I do plastic surgery.
Yeah.
So I did that. And then when I thought about what did I want to do for a career, I knew I could provide a better patient experience on my own, and building my own business and building something that I could be proud of and patients could be proud to be a part of. But I didn't know anything about business. But I thought if I can learn how to operate on a face, I can probably learn how to run a business. So it's been a learning adventure. And
I'm all for like prepping people just in case anything happens. Right. But I'm like, did you hear from other people that were going through the same stages that you were, that sense of doubt and kind of affirming you and letting you know, like, by the way, this might not work out? Or did you feel like that was something that was solely just happening to you?
No, I got a lot of feedback about my path. I mean, I remember in college sitting across from my college advisor, and he's like, you're unlikely to get into med school. Yeah. And I wonder why. Like, I had great grades. I did internships. I did everything that you're supposed to do to get into med school. But he was just prepping me like, you might not get in. But that didn't lessen my try.
Yeah.
So had I not gotten in, I would have taken a year off and tried again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that people, when they give advice, aren't really thinking like failure is okay. If you fail, doesn't mean you shouldn't try again on the same thing. Maybe you should try differently, but you should keep doing it. Or when I opened my business, the worst that could have happened to me is I went bankrupt, but I am employable.
Yes.
And I could get a different job and then try again and figure out where I went wrong. And I think there's so many successful people that they failed just because of other circumstances, not even because their business plan sucked.
Because sometimes it's just the timing. Sometimes the timing isn't right, but that doesn't mean that you should just quit and do something else. If you're passionate about it, then you need to pursue it. And maybe it's just a different time that it's going to work out.
Correct.
And I definitely see that in the way that you lived out your path and your journey when it came to coming and being a plastic surgeon, which is really great.
Yeah. And that's also a big question I have is around what is it about plastic surgery that got you excited, and why did you decide to choose to specialize in plastic surgery?
So I've always been very passionate about art. I was an art minor in college and loved to draw, and I liked realism, and I've wanted to work with my hands. So I was like, I should be a surgeon, but I didn't know anything about plastic surgery. And quite honestly, growing up in Oklahoma, you only heard about like the bad side of plastic surgery, like overdone, not natural. And it's was for Hollywood people. And so I didn't know much about it until I was in college and I got jaw surgery. And that really just set a light off in my head. I was like, I have to do this. My entire face changed after jaw surgery, and it was a functional change and an aesthetic change for me. So I saw both sides, but I mean, I had the surgery for functional reasons, but I have a lot more aesthetically pleasing face now, which is a nice side effect.
touch.
I know. So that really got me interested, and from there, here I am.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I think that that's something that you can bring to your patients. And, you know, I think that you also have a little bit of a unique approach because you're also a woman plastic surgeon. So you've had your own experiences with surgery. You also have, you know, the experiences of being a woman and experiencing the feelings of whenever you either have, you know, like you said, a functional issue or something that bothers you about your appearance that might be influencing how you feel about yourself or your self-confidence or self-worth. How do you feel like being a female as a plastic surgeon is different when you're working with your patients?
I think there's just a level of understanding. Over 90% of people who get plastic surgery are females. So I think that's just identifying with that patient is helpful. But I think every single female has something that they've felt bad about. Maybe grew up naturally thin, and people would call me beanpole, and I looked like a boy when I was a sophomore in high school. Like there was no sign of me ever becoming a girl, actually, and felt bad about that. But now people are like, oh, it must be nice to always be thin. Like women are always pressured to feel bad about what they are, even though they might be perfect to somebody else, or they just look beautiful, period, but they're made to feel bad about something. It might be their best quality. It might be their not best quality. Yeah. But I think some things that are hard to relate to if you don't live in the female world are how even just trying on clothes can shame you. And here you just want to look beautiful in this shirt, and something about your body is preventing that. And it's not because you're trying to live up to someone else's ideal. It's just every time you go into the dressing room and put that shirt on, if something's getting in the way, it actually hurts deep in here.
Yeah.
I've actually struggled with that completely myself. I grew up with a lot of just body dysmorphia. And then on top of that, I have ADHD. So shopping was awful for me. I hated going in person to shop. And it took a really long time to realize why I was struggling with it. And I would go with my mom and my sister, and I would break down in the middle of a store and just get frustrated and frazzled and cry and want to leave, and they didn't understand why. And it took really long to realize part of it was because my ADHD and not being able to focus, and I would get so overwhelmed with all of these options, and then also having body dysmorphia, and you would try something on and it didn't fit the way that you thought it should fit you, would tear you down and tear your confidence down, even though it shouldn't need to. And so I can relate. It's really hard to sit there and have to go through the things like that in your life when you're struggling with things mentally. But that's where it comes into plastic surgery and doing things like that. If that's something that you've been struggling with, you should always feel like you should have the opportunity to be able to fix it if you can.
Right. Like I feel like something I hear from patients often is with breast surgery. I'll have women who come in and they want a breast reduction. And there are so many different types of beautiful breasts out there. Like you can have a lower, more natural breast. And if that fits your life goals, great. That can be a beautiful breast. Asymmetric breast can be beautiful. Small breast, beautiful. Big breast, they're all beautiful. But if they don't fit your lifestyle or your like vision of how your body works together, that's something that we can address. And I'll have patients come in and they will say, well, I went and talked to so-and-so surgeon and they said it would be a crime to put scars on my breast. But that surgeon probably has never worn a bra, has never gotten that shoulder grooving, doesn't get that bra fat that you see in the dresses, or tried to jump around with big breasts. And just because they might be pretty, if you took a picture of them, if they're functionally bothering a woman, they should have the choice of making them smaller and lifting them up. And that is a personal choice.
100%.
That's the beauty of plastic surgery. And I love your story and your example, and same thing. It's like there shouldn't be any sort of shame or judgment around it because it's true, especially as women, the way that we wear clothes when we go to try things on. It's one of those things like for me, I got the breast augmentation when I was 23, 24 because dresses didn't fit me. Right. Because I'm an hourglass. So I have that the curves on the lower half of my body, and then the top half of my body is smaller. So once I got that procedure, I'm able to wear dresses now. Right. I'm able to wear bikinis and feel confident. And it's just one of those things where we experience that when we're growing up, and that's the most frustrating part, especially when you're younger and you can't do anything about it when you're in middle school, high school. But it's just such a blessing that there's plastic surgery now that can help us feel more confident and just be happier overall.
Completely.
Yeah, and it sounds like you made that kind of decision as a very informed woman about like where you wanted your body. Like you hadn't like I see my body as this and I would just like it better if it had that.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't just some chaotic decision of I want to change everything about my body to not be me anymore.
Yeah.
It was just trying to maximize your own beauty and what made you feel good and what allowed you to dress the way you wanted to dress.
To connect with today's guest, you can follow her on Instagram at Rachel Walker MD or at Plastic Surgery Center of Dallas. You can also check out her website at cosmeticsurgerydallas.com. Okay, let's jump into your hot take. My first question is, how young is too young for plastic surgery?
I think that completely depends on the procedure. So if we take probably one of the more simple procedures to talk about age, breast reduction. There are poor young women who develop massive breasts when they're 7 or 8 years old. And that is functionally limiting. That gets them a lot of attention that they don't necessarily want. They can't wear the clothes that their friends can wear because teen clothes are not made that way. And so I think those patients with supportive parents who they also show a good understanding and desire, that makes sense at a younger age, maybe 16 or 18, as long as their breasts are done growing.
Yeah.
I think more gray zone is a breast augmentation. I think it's hard being a teenage girl. And I think there is some glitz and glam of breast augmentation, but you don't necessarily understand all the ins and outs of it. You're putting a foreign body in your body. And you don't usually get the same parent support for a breast aug as you do with a breast reduction. And it can be isolating in recovery. And then you don't identify as yourself and you made some choices when you have a lot of other things going on in your life. So I think that's a little more of a gray zone area. I do think women come in who have true underdevelopment of their breasts. Their breasts actually didn't develop. And that's something, tuberous breast is one of those conditions. And that can be very shameful for a woman because they just don't feel like a woman, but it is not just normal small breast that we're talking about there.
Yeah. It's interesting to think through because the gray zone area, between age 18 and 22, you change so much.
Yes.
You're getting your independence for the first time. You're developing more into your personality. You're building character. You're in college a lot of times. And so I always wonder, I remember we had friends in high school that would get a rhinoplasty, which is one thing. But I think the breast augmentation specifically, there are now especially people at 18 getting one done versus 22 versus 24, 26. What are your thoughts on just that age range and that demographic getting these procedures done?
I think, 18 is not always the same. I have seen 18-year-olds who are very mature about their decision. They want something very natural. They are very well thought out. They've done their research, and I might say yes to them.
Yeah.
But more often you get more of a chaotic 18-year-old who you can tell has a lot of emotional investment in the surgery in the wrong way. They're looking for, oh, maybe I'll fit in better if I have a breast augmentation. And you can see the same with a 24-year-old. Just because they're 24 does not mean that's not present. So I really make sure to spend a lot of time with my patients talking about their goals and their motivations of surgery. Who's going to help them recover? Who have they told that they're getting this procedure? Because if they've told no one, sometimes that's a red flag because they have an internal shame about why they're doing it or what people will think about it.
Okay, let's talk about this. So what are red flags that you notice when you're identifying and meeting with these patients to see if it's something that they should be getting or not?
When they're very rushed about their decision, like, I want to do this tomorrow. You're like, this is surgery. This is not, I mean, it's fun, but it's still surgery. You're still going to sleep and it has its risks. I think it's also very red flaggy when they come in with someone who clearly is more invested in the surgery than they are. So that upsets me, and I will.
Other.
Yes. Wow. And so in my office, we try to pluck that person out of the room and get the patient alone to see if what they says jives with what their significant other says. And then I always see them again because I don't want to be fooled. And I have been fooled before, unfortunately.
Really?
I think other red flags are people who are talking about like how their life would be so much better or how this has always just been so emotionally crushing. And if they are so impacted by their problem, I tell them they might want to talk to someone about it first. Because changes to your body are changes to your body. You've lived in your body for 25 years and you see that same face or that same body in the mirror and then you go make a change to it. It can be a little mentally rough to begin with. And if you start out on unsteady footing, that's not a good place to start out before changing your body.
I would love to know how you've been fooled in the past. Like, how have patients that have come in and when requesting something from you, how have they fooled you?
So I think it might be patients Googling like a plastic surgeon. I think they come in and they're like, I've been looking at this for years. I want this. This is all about me. And they say all the right things, which now that sets off my like a script.
Now that's another red
This is a red flag because you have too many green flags.
Too good to be true.
That sounds like my dating life.
Yes, exactly. It is so much like dating.
So many areas.
It's like if there's too many green flags, you know there's definitely a huge red flag in the back. So I've been fooled by that. And it was so many green flags that I missed the massive, like bull-sized flag in front of me. And recovery was terrible. And the patient experience was terrible. The surgeon experience was terrible because really she was doing all of this because her soon-to-be ex-husband made her feel terrible and she was trying to get him back. And that's not how you get surgery on your body. No. So that was not fun.
Have you ever had to tell someone no, especially after an experience like that? Are you now kind of like, there's actually some times where I'm like, no, this is not a fit for you.
I love the word no. I say no often. And I try to not just deliver it, no, please leave, but make the patient see that either there's not better or there's not safe and better or there's just normal. Like one of the things that drives me nuts about social media is everyone blurs their thighs. Like thighs are all these like beautiful glimmery thighs or they use body blurring stuff. But thighs have laxity, they have cellulite, they have to age, and you can't just lift and cut skin out. And women will come to me wanting me to do something, and occasionally I can help them. Like if simple cellulite, yes, I can help. A little texture, I can help. But they're like a 99.9% thigh. I'm like, this is a thigh that anyone would put on a magazine. They just Photoshop it a little bit. Yeah. And I try to get them to understand. I'll show pictures of other thighs. I'll show pictures of things that aren't better. Like, oh, you want a thigh lift? This is the scar you're getting, and you're taking your thighs down to a much scarier path. And I think patients kind of get in their head a little bit, and most of the time it's well received though. I'm like, well, you could go to someone who is less ethical and maybe they'll let you spend $5,000 on a procedure you don't need, but your outcome is going to be either worse, no better, or maybe 0.1% better, which is not a good way to spend $5,000.
Yeah. You know, what's hard about our culture, it started out in the early 2000s with magazines and the pop stars and the celebrities, and they're all photoshopped in these photos. And now with social media, when it first started taking off in 2008 to today, these images and these videos, they're curated, they're edited, and we're blessed because we're in marketing. So we actually do probably understand that on a deeper level than the average person. But how has social media and just like having access to all of these types of images that, like you said, they are edited. This is not real life. How has that influenced the plastic surgery industry, and how do you address that in your practice?
I do think it's brought more people wanting things that can't be achieved. And I will always tell a patient, like, I cannot do that for you. And if I'm just not the right surgeon, I will give them a surgeon that can do that for them. But if it's not attainable, we have that conversation, but I think it's really hard being a young person or just a person now, because you see everyone's best angles, but then you get to see your worst angles. You accidentally catch yourself looking down on a phone, or someone catches you with a really bad angle on a photo. And lighting matters. Lighting matters so much. And so something I used to do with patients when I did more injectables is I would take photos of people in different lighting, and they had nothing done. And they looked a little questionable in the poor lighting photo, and they looked like their normal, beautiful self, the person that you would see sitting across from you at dinner in the better lighting photo. And they're like, oh my gosh, what did you do to that woman? I'm like, I put different lighting on her. And I think people have a really hard time because they just perseverate over that bad photo in their phone, and they look at it and they're like, well, why did Mary look like this in this picture and I look like I have like a shrunken side of my face? But it's because one person's standing under the tree and the other person's standing right in the sunlight.
Yeah. Lighting is everything.
It is everything. And what's so interesting, and I don't think enough people talk about it, is that perfection in anybody's eyes is going to be subjective. Nobody's going to have the same opinion of what perfect is.
Yes.
And you're going to be the hardest critic on yourself. And so I could sit there and be like, oh my God, Mary looks perfect in this image. She might feel completely different because our perfects are different, and that's okay. We just want us to be happy. We don't need to be striving for perfect. We just need to be striving for happy.
And it's so wonderful that our perfects are different. I could go walk outside and there could be a line of 200 people, and they would all rate me as a different kind of beauty. I'm not everyone's cup of tea, but somebody out there is going to be like, oh my gosh.
Who are you not their cup of tea? Hold on.
She has great X, Y, or Z. Or someone might be like, she needs a bigger booty. And that's just different people's taste. And I think people like to forget that now. Everyone wants to just be perfect. And one of my favorite plastic surgery memes is when they take Brad Pitt's face and put two right sides together and two left sides together. And one of me looks like a serial killer. And he's very attractive with both of his sides, like his right and his left side combined. And I think people miss that with themselves. They see like, oh, my nose leans a little bit or my eyebrow's a little lower, but cut Brad Pitt's face in half is the same.
This leads me to another point that I would love to hear your opinion on. So people are getting these procedures done, whether it's a breast aug, whether it's breast reduction, whether it's a mommy makeover. And that's very going to be altering the way that they view themselves, because they've looked at themselves, like you said, their entire life's one way. They make a change and now it's completely different. So do you have any recommendations for patients that are getting things like this done and might experience imposter syndrome after, or how you can prep providers to then prep their patients?
Yes, I always tell patients, make sure you're talking with your loved ones about this recovery process, what you're doing, and mentally prepare yourself for recovery. Don't have a busy schedule while you're recovering. Have something that's mentally peaceful for you, be it watching your favorite show, reading books, spending time with friends while you recover. Because most of the time you have to take a little time off of work. Make sure it's not your busy season. And I try to pick out the things that I think could be hard for them, like with moms. I love mommy makeovers because it's one of those aesthetic and functional surgeries for these women, but there is still an emotional component because their extra belly skin and their stretch marks, we like to call them tiger stripes because they earn them. Those are something that signified that they had these 2, 3, 4 beautiful babies, and they're proud to have done that, but they don't feel like their pre-baby self. So they don't recognize themselves pre-baby, but they also love who they are post-baby. And I think there's also a sense of maybe shame or guilt, like, oh my gosh, I had these babies, my body did this for me, and I'm a jerk for wanting to change it. But also, you're not a jerk for just wanting to feel more like yourself and wear the clothes you used to wear, or be able to plank without some extra sway in there. And we try to talk to our patients about this, and we also just really try to support our patients after the fact, because no matter how much we talked before, there's still going to be a patient who's emotionally having a hard time with their recovery. And if we can just get them past that like 3-month mark, generally, patients have like settled back out, but we do tend to talk more at the front end.
I I like this topic because we were at a shoot the other day and one of the women came in for a testimonial for one of our clients, and she expressed how guilty she felt about wanting a plastic surgery. And it took her years to even pick up the phone to call. And wherever she was from, whoever she was surrounded by, whether it was her family, her friends, her community, plastic surgery was just something that was just really frowned upon. And she was a mom of 3 beautiful kids, but she was just so unhappy with her appearance afterwards. So when it comes to women, especially who might be surrounded by others who maybe aren't supportive because they aren't educated on these procedures, what advice do you have for women in that situation?
I would say, again, talk to people close to you, have some sounding boards, and not everyone's going to be supportive. I also tell patients that I feel like are kind of early in their process, go talk to some other plastic surgeons as well. And don't make a decision quickly, and make sure you're in the right space. Like, you're physically healthy, you're mentally healthy, you're at your goal weight. So there's a lot of check boxes you need to hit before you're getting surgery. But I think there's also opportunities to join groups of women that are like, and say, like, can I talk about this experience? Can I talk about your recovery process? Like, did you feel shame? Because there's so many women out there who are going through the exact same thing.
I really wanted to ask you what kind of impact this makes on your patients' lives when they come back after their procedure. What are the things that they're sharing with you?
That is the reason I do this, honestly. I had a patient recently who she had lost 200 pounds on her own, diet and exercise, had worked hard for years, and was very proud of herself, but just still felt this sense of being a heavy person because she had all this skin left over, even though she was tiny. And I still remember our first consult. I have her in a robe and I'm kind of feeling on her, feeling how much skin she has. And I was like, you are so tiny. And it was an honest statement. She was tiny. She could not lose more weight, didn't need to lose more weight. She was so strong, her abs. I was like, tighten your abs for me. And I was like, it hurt to touch them. And I was like, you're just so tiny, you're strong. And you could see on her face that hit her weird. I was like, huh. And anyways, she comes back 6 months later, is ready for surgery, has surgery, is thrilled. And then she comes to her 3-month appointment and she's wearing kind of baggy clothes. She looks great, but it's in baggy clothes. I was like, hey, what's going on? She's like, I'm a thin person now, but I don't know how to get out of my bigger person clothes. I was like, well, take one step at a time. Go get a pair of pants you always wanted to wear and start there. Comes back to her 6-month follow-up, is just radiant. She is like, I finally feel like the thin person I am. I finally threw all of that away. I was holding on to it. And she said she didn't think she would ever get there because even after losing the 200 pounds, she identified as a 200-pound person. She would look in the mirror and still see that.
Wow.
And then it just took, even just changing a little bit of her wardrobe, getting a new pair of pants and putting it on and being like, oh my gosh, there is the woman I worked so hard to be, because it was not easy for her. I mean, her recovery with me was easy, and that wasn't a hard part of her journey. She put in all the hard work, but she could finally see it.
Yeah.
The psychological journey is what she had to work through on her own after the physical one.
Yes.
Incredible.
Social Practice would love to offer your practice a free social media audit. Visit us on social media at Social Practice US. Click the link in our bio to claim your free audit today. I love stories like that, and that is exactly the kind of content that does so well on your page. What we love about working with you is that you have all of the factors needed to be successful on social. We've got your personal brand and your story and your why. We've got your team and your culture that we love capturing. Those videos always perform so well. And then those patient stories. So just like that patient you just shared where you literally changed her life. She did the hard work, but she couldn't have put those pair of pants on unless you were able to surgically help her. And so with that in mind, how has social media impacted the success of your practice?
It is tremendous. I think particularly on Instagram, patients have a very good idea of what they're walking into when they come into our office. They understand our philosophy, what we value. They understand who I am as a physician, who my team is. And they also get to see a diverse body types, which I think is sometimes rare. Like, we really try to push people of all body types to give us consent for before and after so someone can see them and what their results could be.
Yeah.
But it's so nice to have a patient come in and be like, oh, I feel like I already know you.
Yeah. It's funny. I was thinking about your last photo shoot. Your team has like quadrupled since we first started. And when you said diverse body type, I envisioned the last photos that we took at the Lumen Room in Dallas. Your team, is it like 16, 18 people?
I think we're 14 or 15.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was a lot. And it is like, they are all so beautiful, but they all are so different. We've got tall, short, thin, a little bit curvier. We even have Paul. We've got one man.
Yes, one man.
But I think it's just such a great representation of just like what you're going for and how you're serving women in the community of all shapes and sizes. But with social media in mind, has there been any sort of challenges that have come from being, you guys have a very active page. You guys have a lot of visibility. Has anything happened that has created any sort of challenges or conflicts as a result of having this exposure on social?
I would say the only negative is there's always going to be internet trolls. And I'm not too bothered by if I'm trolled, but if someone goes and trolls one of the before and afters, when it was exactly what the patient wants. I mean, it's different if they're like, you could have done this better. But if I could have done it better, I would fix it on a patient. So that's not ever a situation. But if they're like, I liked her better before, I want to be like, shut your mouth. You're not that woman.
Yeah.
You don't even know her. You know nothing about her. And so that is difficult. And it's difficult because I would hate for a patient to ever see that. That
reminds me, I'm very open and honest on my social media.
Yeah.
And I don't have a PR agent. So we love you for it. I just asked for feedback this morning about my social. But it reminds me of, I was sharing about getting Botox or something like that. And some man, it's always on Facebook too, the worst trolls. I got a DM that he was like, well, why don't you just love yourself the way you are?
Right.
And it's like, well, hold on a second. That's not the point of this. It's to be honest about the things that I'm getting done, because social media is a place where people do put their best foot forward. And a lot of people don't share the work that they're getting done. And then it leaves this unrealistic expectation in our minds of how we're supposed to look. And it's like, well, this person's had XYZ procedure. That's why they look that way. So do you feel like there's still a little bit of a disconnect on social media of people being honest about the work they're getting done? Do you think that that's changing? What have you seen?
I think it's still very split. I do think the younger generation is doing a better job about being honest with what they have done. And then some of the older generations and unfortunately celebrities are like, I was just born this way, or I used olive oil. And I don't know why there is such shame. I mean, we wash our cars. That is not a functional thing at all. Having a dirty car does not make your car run differently. Yet why wouldn't I take care of my face and laser away some of the sun changes or things that have happened to my skin as it aged?
It's so crazy. And there is actually, when you said olive oil, I was like, I was like, squirrel. There is an Instagram account called Olive Oil, and it's memes for the aesthetics industry.
What?
But yeah, I said it in the social practice chat yesterday because it makes fun of, people are like, oh, it's just olive oil. People are doing the same thing with semaglutide. They're losing all this weight. And then they're like, oh, it was just diet and exercise. And I'm like, why don't you just share it?
Why don't you just say what it is? Because then you're going to be creating unrealistic expectations for everybody else. And they're going to think, why was she born this way? Or why was she able to do this by XYZ and I'm doing that and I'm not getting it? And then that's going to hinder their mental health.
Exactly.
In their journey trying to achieve the goals that they're wanting.
Exactly.
Yeah. As we're on the topic of social media, I feel like we have to talk about influencers and we have to talk about the influence that they have on their followers, especially when it comes to plastic surgery. And my main thing that I want to talk to you about is breast implant illness and how a lot of influencers are having the explant surgery where they're having their implants removed, whether they think it's causing fertility issues or thyroid problems. And then all of them are posting about it on social media. And so then their followers feel like they're going through the same thing and they get nervous and have that fear of wanting to do the same thing. Have you experienced that of patients coming to you talking about that?
Yes. I think, again, social media is wonderful, but social media can also be very toxic, for lack of a better word. I think breast implant illness is a thing. I do think it gets blown out of proportion. And I think it's a little irresponsible of influencers to talk about the medical impacts that something that doesn't even have data is causing. That being said, if I have a patient who comes into my office and they think their breast implants are making them sick, I have them document their symptoms and I want to work with them. I think there are some people who cannot tolerate breast implants, but I do think it is very, very sad to have a bunch of women almost just become anxious that they have a problem when they don't. Maybe they are tired. Maybe they are a little sluggish, but maybe it's because they have 3 kids under the age of 5. Or maybe there's something else going on. And I hate to see somebody come in who has actual medical problem, and they're just thinking it's their breast implants, and they maybe have something that needs to be treated, but they're so tunnel visioned in because they have just been hit from all sides, because, you know, social media knows what you watch, so you just keep getting more of what you see. And so it's just overwhelming information, and then some of it is just frankly false. Like breast implants aren't giving you heavy metal poisoning. There are trace heavy metals in breast implants. There are trace heavy metals in water that we drink. And so that is just fake news, but it's really sad for those women who have been happy with their breast implants and they have an actual happy, healthy life, and they go get a surgery that they don't need because they were influenced.
Yeah, I think this is such a good topic, because I get very passionate about this, because there are so many misconceptions. There's a lot of misinformation out there about the aesthetic industry, about the procedures that we're doing. And people like to lead with the headline, and they read the headline and they don't do the research. They don't do their due diligence. They don't get all the facts. And the reality is 90% of the time, there's so much more to the story than just like what you see at the surface. And we love social media, but what's so frustrating about it is that people just take the bait and they run with it, and they see it on social. They see 3 of their favorite influencers that have millions of followers doing this explant surgery. And now, you know, I've had several conversations with friends who are like, you know, now I'm nervous. What if something's wrong with me? And so it's creating this fear that didn't need to exist in the first place. And, you know, some of the health issues that they're facing, there's so many other factors that could be influencing that. But it is something that, you know, the reason we even have this show is to expose, you know, what is the truth, what's not. And so I would be curious, just as we kind of wrap this segment up, with breast implant illness, what are the signs that truly is a concern? And you know, what would you say percentage wise, and it could be ballpark, what percentage of the time is it actually that? And what percentage of the time, like, do we need to like slow down and really just look at all the facts before we make that decision?
Well, it's hard to say, because breast implant illness is not like, there's no diagnostic studies for it. I think a good conversation with a good doctor, like I see patients who have breast implant illness and they weren't influenced, and they have symptoms that are non-specific. That's the sad thing. And I don't like saying that as a doctor. I wish I could like do a blood test and say, hey, you have this, or you don't have this. But I don't like it when people are bullied into thinking they have it. But I do think that every doctor should sit with these patients. And I think as a society, the Plastic Surgery Society, we're doing so much research on what is good, what is bad. Like there's people out there talking about these really aggressive techniques to cure breast implant illness, and they are taking advantage of women, and they're paying more for surgeries they don't need, that it can be deforming and are going to hurt them long term. There's a difference of just taking the breast implant out. Great, do that. But I do think it's just irresponsible to talk like you are a medical doctor when you're not. And I would say that the same thing goes for other procedures. Because again, I don't feel either way about breast implants. I never tell someone they need breast implants. But if an influencer gets a tummy tuck, I think it's really awesome if they're transparent about it. But they shouldn't then be like, I can only wear these pants because I got a tummy tuck. Or like, I look cute right here because I got a tummy tuck. Because again, that's making people dissatisfied with their own body. There's a difference to say like, I look better because I got a tummy tuck.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. And it's just... It's interesting how all of this information is so accessible now these days, but we're so grateful to have guests like you come on and expose some of the truths, you know, give your honest experience and your honest, educated opinion on these things, because we need it. But we are so grateful for you. We're so grateful for your partnership. We're so happy for how much you've grown over the years. And we so appreciate you for coming on our show today.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think we all learned a lot today. So we're excited, and tune in for our next episode, guys.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.
You can find us on social media at the Aesthetic Edit Podcast.
We're on all podcast platforms, so don't forget to subscribe, and we'd love to hear from you.
And follow Social Practice on social media. You can find us at Social Practice US.
If you'd like to become a guest on the podcast, visit our webpage at social-practicetx.com/the-aesthetic-edit.